I pray that God's word is spoken and that God's word is heard. Amen. There's a beautiful line in the reading from the Acts of the Apostles this morning as Paul shows his unique way of meeting people where they are, right? He's in Athens and they've got temples to all kinds of gods there in Athens. And he notices there's this place honoring the temple of the unknown God. And so Paul meets them there and says, let me introduce you to that unknown God. And introduces them to Christ by doing so. And in this introduction, he reminds them that when we are searching, and I love this image, perhaps groping for God and finding him, we're reminded that he's not far from each of us, for in him we live and move and have our being. There's this image of this seeking, almost as if you can picture someone blindfolded, seeking for God, yearning for God, as they were when they built that temple to the unknown God, not quite knowing what they were seeking, but being drawn to do so nonetheless. And so this leads me to ask us today, why did we come today? What were we seeking? And it's not a rhetorical question. You are invited to give a shout out. What brought you here this morning? To praise God. What else brought you here this morning? Community. Because you're the lector? What else brought you here this morning? Finding the right path. Peace. Donuts. Love, indeed. Friends at home, friends who are worshiping with us from home, I invite you to contemplate that too. What led you to tune in now, whether you're watching it live or later this week? What brought you to this moment? What were you seeking? The good news is, whatever it is we're seeking, whatever it is, in the end, the answer is the same. The answer is love. The answer is love. And so we meet Jesus and the disciples on that last night. And those of you who were able to come to our Maundy Thursday service, this is that night, that final night when they came together for dinner and he washed their feet, even though some of them were not keen on having any more than some of us were keen on having our feet washed that night. He washed their feet out of love. And on that same night, Judas went out into the darkness to betray him. And on that same night, there was that back and forth between him and our patron Saint Peter over whether or not Peter would deny him, which he denied he would deny him. But of course, we know he did deny him not once, but 3 times. In that same night, as they spent that evening together after dinner, in John's gospel, there's a whole lot of address. There's a whole farewell address. And I encourage you to sit down with John's gospel and just pray your way through that whole address. Kind of like some of us may remember from high school American history, having to read George Washington's farewell address, right? And George was saying everything he could while he was still president, before he wasn't anymore, and wanted to give this new country his best. Jesus is doing the same for his disciples. And it's the same night in which he gave them the mandatum novum, from which we get Maundy Thursday, the new commandment. Love one another as I have loved you. Of all the things Jesus could have commanded, that's it. That is it. Love one another as I have loved you. So when he is saying to them, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. That's the commandment. It was just moments ago that he had said it. I give you a new commandment. Love one another as I have loved you. And if you love me, you'll do that. If you love me, you'll love one another as I have loved you, with a sacrificial love. And by the way, he says, this is how we'll be together forever. I mean, they don't, even though he's been telling them for a while, they're not 100% on what's about to happen. He knows what's about to happen. He knows that they're going to need something to hold on to on that dreadful day and then the 3 days in between. And then, friends, after his ascension, they're still going to need to have something to hold on to. And what he gives them is this promise that when you do this, when you love, that's how we find our way to one another again. That's how I abide in you and you in me and my Father in you. That's how this abiding, that's such the heart of John's gospel, happens. Remember, John's gospel, which begins with the word becoming flesh and dwelling among us, that dwelling, that abiding, that is the good news, according to John. And that good news is all about love. Yes, God's love for us. But if we love God, there's one thing God asks of us in this gospel. One thing. Love one another as I have loved you. That's how we live out this relationship of love together. And this world needs to hear that message of love. I'm reminded of former presiding Bishop Michael Curry's favorite sermon. We all have one sermon. All of us clergy have one sermon, and we just preach it in different ways. Michael Curry's one sermon could be summed up in the sentence, if it's not about love, it's not about God. If it's not about love, it's not about God. And this world needs that message of love. God is all about love. And we love God by loving one another, loving our neighbor, loving as he loved us. We come here for so many reasons, but at the heart of all of them is love. Our love of God, our love of peace, our seeking the right path, our wanting to be transformed, our hearts transformed, the world transformed, all those things we yearn for, we seek as we try to find our way. At the heart of all of them is love. And not a misty-eyed, soft filter, romantic, angel strumming harps prettily, Cupidy kind of love, but a hard kind of love that's a love of choosing, of acting, of deciding to love, even when it's hard. This world makes us work for it sometimes. But staying in love is a choice. Loving when it's hard is a choice. Loving when the world makes it really hard. We have to. God needs us to. And when we do, we love God. And when we do, we find what it is we're looking for.